La primera genialidad, digamos, luterana es el descubrimiento de que las imágenes son el sistema más eficaz de propagación de una idea que pueda existir. Como se esparció y se difuminó esa idea por todas partes, ¿no? A la inmensa mayoría de la gente, que era iletrada, le entraba por los ojos y las orejas.
Los Rothschild, hacia el final del 800, compran la agencia de noticias Reuters, comenzando el proceso de control sobre los medios de comunicación. Todo este tipo de denuncias, todo lo que significara mostrar la historia verdadera y denunciar la historia oficial.
Even before television was invented, mainstream media was still lined to go to war. In 1895, William Randolph Hearst of the New York Journal sent his employees to cover the Cuban revolt against Spain. Lacking anything newsworthy to report, Hearst told his employee, famed illustrator Frederick Remington,
"These posters inform us a great deal about Nazi thinking and the ways in which they presented images to the public, whether it's of this kind of strong, heroic figure breaking the chains of slavery, this playing upon dissatisfaction with the status quo, the ways in which they engaged in what today we would call niche marketing. So it's women who work in the home, farmers, workers. You don't tend to associate the Nazis with the word freedom, but they used it endlessly.
They took the babies out of incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on it.
And if this all seems familiar, well, it should. A similar disinfo tactic was used to bolster support for the war with Iraq.
Cold war.
That was Nurse Nayira, whose tearful testimony swung the pendulum in favor of war. After the vote was safely passed, Nayira, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, admitted to making the whole story up. Nurse Nayira and those faulty claims of weapons of mass destruction weren't the only lies told to convince America a war with Iraq was necessary. CNN also did their part to play up the drama.
CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me, just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There was a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. The white say.
Oh, I love this country. Boy, did I almost...
Armed with knives, armed with chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. Fanatics, terrorists, September 11th. September 11th, killers, September 11th, terrorists. Terrorists of Al-Qaeda, terrorists, nuclear weapons, terrorists. 9/11, terror, terrorist, evil.
September 11th, September 11th. The terrorists, war and danger. September 11th, terrorism, global terrorism, terrorism, terrorists. Terrorists, 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 the terror. Terrorists, terrorist, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism, terrorists. Terrorism. September 11th, world terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism. September the 11th, terror. Weapons of mass destruction. September the 11th, terrorists. The evil terrorists, no.
Esto que estás viendo es la primera vez que lo vas a ver en la televisión argentina. Y quizás sea una de las últimas veces que lo veas. Porque ningún canal pasaría esto al aire. ¿Sabés qué es esto? Esto es técnicamente un mapa de medios. Mirá cómo se vinculan todos. Vamos acá, vamos a este redondelito. Grupo Clarín tiene la totalidad del diario Clarín, el 50% de Teis Sports, el 50% de TSC, el 99,2% de Artear, que a la vez tiene el 50% de Carburando, el 30% de Ideas del Sur, el 100% de Canal 13, que también tiene la mitad de Polka, la mitad más uno de TC 2000, el 30% de Patagonic, Papel Prensa, la mitad, el proveedor de papel barato subsidiado por el Estado más importante. ¿Asociados ahí con quién? Con el diario de la Nación. Estos son los tipos que manejan gran parte de tus horas libres, de tus deseos, de tus ganas de consumir, de tus simpatías políticas y lo que es peor de todo, de tu libertad.
Look at that. That is a complete fucking fraud, and it looks 100% real.
It's the best work I've ever done in my life, because it's so honest.
Death cult.
It is a death cult.
Nothing but a death cult.
Islamist death cult.
The Islamist death cult.
Death cult.
Death cult.
The death cult flag.
This is a death cult.
To use this term is to dignify a death cult.
It's not a state, it's a death cult. Death cult.
Inspired by the Islamist death cult.
Islamist death cult.
The Islamist death cult.
It is ultimately a death cult.
Death cult. A death cult that in declaring itself a caliphate has declared war on the world.
Daesh is responsible for genocide against. Daesh is genocidal. Daesh killed hundreds of Yazidi men.
Time is of the essence. Our goal is not to deter or contain ISIS, but to defeat and destroy ISIS. The caliphate and deny ISIS control of territory in Iraq and Syria, taking back more territory from ISIS, crush ISIS's enclave of terror.
The decline of ISIL in Syria and Iraq, we're going to keep going after ISIL aggressively across every front. 2 years ago, ISIL was racing across Iraq. ISIL has not had a major successful Syria or Iraq in a full year. In other words, ISIL turns out not to be invincible. They are
clip, this time artificially dubbing the doctor's voice to suit the establishment's need for the chemical weapons tagline.
We've had a massive influx of what looked like serious burns. It seems like it must be some sort of